All right, now we're live on the World Wide Web. We're here in the tubes.
Oh, hello. Good morning
Good
to
morning, good night.
everyone. Good, yeah, whatever. It is it is a Sunday. We are recording at the right time. Uh, I think that it is probably going to improve my sleep schedule for the rest of the week that we're recording on a Sunday instead of me trying to force it in on like a Monday or a Tuesday.
All we
So I
needed
feel
was
good.
fallback this whole time.
Yeah. I feel good about our health and wellness, today, as well as frankly the health and wellness of the Bulldog Nation. So we're
Like
gonna
when you say things
record
like
our
Bulldog
Missouri
Nation.
review. Yeah, well, I hate using the word Bulldog Nation. I don't know. It's a little. It's not that I
So
hate it.
it's very like denim vest, backwards chair. I'm gonna level with you
Yeah,
here, Bulldog Nation. You ready for it?
yeah. I like it, but I don't know. I like it, but I don't like it simultaneously. I struggle with it.
Listen.
Anyway,
Can I level with
I'm
you? Do you
we've
trust me?
had a good time here today, but let's have some real talks about your journey with Jesus.
Yep,
I'm
you
your
got it.
youth minister. Anyway, you know what? I don't want to make fun of youth ministers. The last time that happened, someone yelled at me. I'm your school counselor.
Oh.
Now I'm gonna have the school counselors come in for me, but that's fine. Anyway,
No, they understand. They get it.
yeah, they get it. They get like most school counselors I know aren't like hello fellow teens. They're more like, are you sure that you're okay? Do I need to call someone? Like they're much more harried than that.
Yes.
Anyway, so we're gonna record the Missouri review episode here. You can expect this to come out early in this week based on whatever schedule Justin needs to keep for his real job because, that's his priority as it should be. And I think that's about all before we start it up. You got anything else, Jay Bray?
Did Humphrey Mizzou visit you over the weekend?
Yes, I heard a clattering. I heard a clatter.
Oh. Upon your roof?
Uh,
Your rooftop?
yeah, on the roof.
That was
And
his
there he
cloven
was.
hooves.
Yeah, I like how we're sort of doing the thing. We're doing the like blind man and the elephant thing, where it's like we're describing each part of what we can feel
Uh-huh.
on of Humphrey Mizzou. I was gonna say with his yellow and black tiger print top hat and his waistcoat and his cloven hooves.
Well, he wears
he
tap
like
shoes also.
Oh, and so
So
he
it could
wears
have been
like
either one.
tap shoes adapted for cloven hooves.
That's correct.
He's an ungulate, certainly, but he's a tool using ungulate because he can adapt his shoes.
Mm-hmm.
But he was also the first president, so he's
Yeah.
apparently of human level intelligence.
It's pretty incredible. I mean, when you
So we're
live for
thinking
that
kind of
long,
like a
you really figure
right,
things
yeah,
out.
absolutely. I'm thinking that this is kind of like a more football focused Mr. Tumnus. Is that
Yeah.
kind of like where we're?
Does Mr. Tumnus eats human scabs?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, then
It's
yes,
like a Mr.
very
Tumnus.
much like Mr.
It's like a
Tumnus.
Mr. Tumnus that you would find, like just hanging out in the bathroom of a Love's truck stop in Kansas City. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like a Mr. Tumnus who really likes weird pizza.
Mr.
You know what I'm
Tumnus,
saying?
when you're at the gas station and you always say like, "I wonder who eats all this meat in cans." It's Humphrey Mizzou. That's what you
Yeah, it's
leave
Humphrey Mizzou,
underneath
yeah.
the your palm tree in front of the hotel nearest to you, so that Humphrey Mizzou can then come consume said canned meat and
Right.
go
Yeah.
about his
Well,
journey.
because for Humphrey Mizzou, the annual Florida bowl game is the closest thing to Christmas
Ugh.
for old Humphrey. Do you want to like start the episode now?
I guess we could, yeah.
one of my very dear friends, Laura Patterson, who texted me the other day, and she was like, "I haven't listened to Chapel Bell Curve in a long time,
Good.
but on this last episode, there was a lot more of like, what the fuck is Nathan talking about than normal." And I just really thought about that for a long time, and she was like, "It's not a bad thing. It's just
It's just an observation.
just an observation."
Just put that out
Anyway.
there.
Yeah, so I guess I'll do the intro here, and then we'll get into it.
Yeah, sure. Let's do that.
All right, let me pull up the notes. I'm recording.
Humphrey Mizzou sits in the old gum tree. Memory.
So is this like an Australian cultural sort of touchstone as well? That's
I
like
think it's
a Humphrey
non-American,
Mizzou
whatever it is.
carol?
We've, much like all things, we've misappropriated it in some way, and we've stolen it and bastardized
I
it.
believe Kookaburra is of Kookaburra is of what should we call it? Extraction. Australian.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it was one of those Australian punters he took back over. It was sort of one of those cultural, you have both physical and cultural immigration, and one of the cultural immigrants from Missouri to Australia was the legend of Humphrey Mizzou. Anyway, so let's please move on before...
Okay.
Please, God, move on. Okay, you ready?
Yep.
Welcome to Chapel Bell Curve, a stats-focused podcast about UGA football. I'm Nathan.
And I'm Justin.
Or as he's known, his cool dad name, Jay Bray. His math rock name, Jay Bray.
When I'm driving my Suburban full of children down to, I guess, the soda shop, I don't know what dads do. What do dads do?
Yeah, no, well, soda shops don't exist anymore until a dad has a carload full of children, and then they just sort of spring
And a crisis.
into existence. And a crisis, yeah. Dad doesn't know what to do. All right, so we are here today, as always, to review the latest University of Georgia football game, nominally. That's an important word in that sentence. And today, in particular, we're going to be reviewing the most recent matchup between your Georgia Bulldogs and the fighting Mizzou Tigers of Columbia. And so we're going to do some experiences on the day. We actually got to see each other at this game, which was rare and awesome. We're going to talk about some stats. We are going to talk about sort of where we are in the season, some observations. We're going to answer some of your questions. We have the triumphant return of Dr. James Barefield's Troll Corner, presented by Sherwine, the wine what gives you diabetes. TM.
Mm-hmm.
And then we've got some rage from Yara, and I think that's about it. So let's get started. So Justin, talk to me about your day.
Oh man, it was an unexpected day for me. And what I mean by that is that I had an old friend reach out over email and tell me he had some tickets for me. Which is truly one of the, I say this all the time. If you live in Athens long enough and you say a small handful of times that you enjoy football games, then you will never want for football tickets ever again. You can't be choosy or picky about the football tickets you get. You will just get them at some point, and people will remember for some reason. Or I guess you can run a football podcast for X number of years too. That helps. But I did come into some
Taoist way of looking at it.
Yes, absolutely.
Like,
yeah, they come to you.
The path to football tickets. You sit under the banyan tree, and then the football tickets appear for you, right?
They do, yeah. If you close your eyes long enough and open them, when the time feels right, the tickets will appear. I call it, I just Athens'd my way into some tickets, is what I told my football friend Will, who comes with me to all the games. But I had an old friend reach out, and I'm almost sure, I'm pretty positive that these times overlapped and all these people knew each other. Actually, I am positive, but I don't know if this friend was at the event that I'm about to talk about. But a few episodes ago, I talked about Slippery Mike, and I shared the Slippery Mike story. And Blake, who was kind enough to give me these tickets, I got to see him after several years of not seeing him, and I met his son, who speaks better Spanish than all of us, which was really cool. So yeah, I'm just going to say, Blake and Micah, thanks so much for the tickets. But also, I don't know if he was at the Slippery Mike story party. I just texted him before we started recording to see, but it's like, this is prime bedtime for kiddos and dads. Blake, what do dads do? Mm-hmm. Actually, I should have asked Blake, what do dads do? Where are the soda shops at? Where's the nearest one?
You might get a real existential answer.
Yeah, what do dads do all day? But yeah, I got to sit. So, all that to say, these tickets were not like 600 level tickets, which I'll say, I love the 600 level tickets. They're great. They're out of the way. You get to see the whole field. It's insane. But this time we were on the end zone, on the opposite side of Tate, and we were in the kind of the splash zone of all of the field goals being kicked. And so that was pretty awesome because there were a lot of field goals being kicked on Saturday. Several times the ball was just like 3 or 4 people away from us, and I gotta say I just really enjoy like the camaraderie of all the folks that have season tickets, and all those people like know each other, and they all love seeing each other every Saturday for however many years they've been coming. Um, and all the people that were around us were super kind because they knew that we didn't belong there, quote unquote. They weren't our tickets, but they were still really excited to meet us and like involve us, and so that was really cool too. I really enjoyed that, but I finally got to sit in one of those little red seats. Those little red seats you see up in the stands. Never sat in one before. They're great, fantastic. I want one in my house. I want to be sitting on one right now. Other kind of experiential observations. Got to see Thick Kicker of the Mizzou Tigers. Love him. He has my heart. Blooper, the Blooper anonymity, like the haze was lifted. I saw Blooper without his costume on. He's a zaddy inside and out. Blooper is. The guy didn't look like he had been sweating or had been in a mascot for the last several hours, but good looking guy.
That's how hot people are, man.
That's how hot people do. They're just always ready, never sweating, always good. But the very last note I have here is just Dan Jackson, because I've never heard Dan Jackson's name said so many times. I knew he existed, but the very first time that the ball was thrown to Dan Jackson's side of the field, Will and I looked at each other and we were like, that's the guy I would pick on this team if I were throwing a ball, if I were a quarterback. And then he was picked on for the next like several drives, but it didn't matter because Dan Jackson was cleaning up. He was doing his job. So Dan Jackson, very good. What about you? How was your experience?
I just want to say he did lead the team with 6 solo tackles.
Yeah,
so
he cleaned up, dude.
That your inference was correct. So the early wake up was pretty rough. I got there. I was actually late. I didn't get there till like 6:20, and we started at 6. But some of I think the Sousa trucks got there at like 5:10 or something. So it was definitely a long day. It was a very Lord, got an autoplay video here.
Oh hell,
sorry. Yeah, that was very frustrating. But practice went well. I thought it was really awesome to see my boy, my big beautiful 6'8" redheaded co-host at the game. He sort of I will say Justin did not describe this part, but when he came down to see us in the band, and you didn't mention, but you did get to see Yara, I think.
I
right?
did. Yes, I did see Yara. Yeah. I did not get to say that. I'm sorry.
No, that was pretty awesome that y'all got to see each other in person. And it was great to see Justin, but Justin also did a very Athens move where he sort of just like somehow got down beside the band and then just stood inside of the band. And his friend Will was like, "Can we be here?" And Justin was just like, "Yeah, we're here." It's like,
he was like, "I think I'm in the way," and I was like, "You are," and then I just kept on with my conversation.
Yeah,
like,
you are. Just stand here.
Given.
We're here now. And it's just weird. It was just kind of weird because a lot of we have like security personnel on either side, or like stadium security on either side of the band, that kind of keep people from messing with the band. And Justin apparently just sort of like, I'm one with the Force and the Force is one with me.
I just walked
his
through.
way through. Yeah, and he was like, I was like, "How'd you get down there?" And he's like, "Oh, I just came down." And I was like, "That's not
that's not how that works."
that you are an exception to the rule, my friend.
I don't know what it was,
but I thought that was a very Justin sort of just like Justin sneaky stealthy, right? Not just stealthy, but sneaky about his ability to be stealthy.
I don't know what it is.
He's sort of like the guy who can only be invisible when no one's looking at him. Let's see. So halftime was very emotional on so many levels. We were honoring Coach Rick, and the Redcoats put a show together in 1 week. We learned the music 2 weeks ago, and they did not know any of the sets, any of the entrance or exit, none of the marching stuff as of Tuesday. So we put all of that on Tuesday and Thursday. We also had integrated a bunch of samples and clips into the show, like the Soldier Boy thing and the Air Tonight intro. And the guy who works the front ensemble, Andrew, had a brass band concert during the Friday practice, which is when we were going to firm all of that up. Wow. And I had been working with that, and so that was super stressful. It was a very stressful week, but we got it done, and I was very proud of the band. They went out there and played a show that did not look like it had taken a week to put on, and it did take a week to put on, and it was very high stress in a lot of ways, but we got it done. There was a lot of people. I heard a lot of people from the band, from different sections of the band, who do not see each other, say, "Well, we just got to get through this week." Like it was one of those weeks where like there were many people like echoing that sentiment, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man, I am red. Anyway, so I felt like did a really good job, but it was still just like halftime was just like really emotionally draining because we had a dedication to Cassie Motes, who was our flagline instructor who's passed away before halftime, and it was one of those things where Tom Jackson, who is the voice of the Redcoat Band, Dr. Tom Jackson rather, he choked up in the middle of his dedication, and then I choked up, and then Mark Richt was like right there, and the last set of the show was like Rick's like name in script or whatever, and he came out, and it was just really cool. Like it was just a lot of emotions, a lot of feelings. I saw there was one of my old students that I tutored at the Writing Center when I was at UGA at the Athletic Academic Writing Center over at Rankin Smith was there. It was Nathan Theus, who was, if you remember John Theus, he's a very famous, well, not famous, but he was like sort of an offensive lineman in the, I want to say, mid 2010s kind of era UGA. Nathan was his brother, who was also on the team. Who I think Nathan was a long snapper, I want to say. But anyway, so I saw Nathan and what?
Different Nathan.
Yeah, Nathan Theus.
Go ahead. Yeah.
So sorry, back up. All of Mark Richt's captains were there from 2001 to 2015, and Nathan, the other Nathan, was there to honor him. And I was very touched because he knew my name and he saw me and remembered me. He's like, "You look really good. It's great to see you." And we hugged. And so I don't know. It was just like for someone who can be not very healthily attached to his emotions occasionally, it was like a 15-minute time span where I was like happy and crying, and it was a lot, but it went really well, so I was happy.
It's a lot going on.
Yeah, there was a lot of emotions. Hold on, pause 1 second. My face looks really splotchy in this light. All right, there we go. A little bit less. Starting to look a little washed out. It's not my color. All right, I'm back. So, yeah, John Theus was one of the first like very good offensive linemen to come to UGA in some time at the time that he committed to UGA. So, as for the game, well, I mean, we'll talk about it in depth. I thought that outside of the game, Blooper, the Braves mascot, as you said, got up on the sort of railing in front of the Redcoats, the sort of like barrier between the track and the stands, and danced in front of the Redcoats while they played Power by Kanye West, which was a very cool experience. I thought it was really cool. I saw Jock Peterson. That dude is built like a brick house.
He's huge.
Jock Peterson is thick. He is dummy thick. And I guess I knew that from seeing him, but then seeing him was really powerful. Rodrigo was there. And we were really laughing because they were introducing all these old players who would come back, and then DeAndre Swift and Rodrigo were there. And it was like they introduced DeAndre Swift, who is like a very good running back in the NFL, one of the better running backs to come through UGA in the past 10, 15 years. And there was like, yeah, right. And then they introduced this tiny, skinny white boy, Rodrigo Blankenship, after him for some reason. And then the whole stadium was like, yeah! And I was just like, I mean, look, don't weep for him. He's a millionaire. But can you imagine being DeAndre Swift and being like, hey, do you remember when I won the 2017 SEC championship by myself? Do you remember that? Like, were you all there for that? That was not that long ago.
Not at all.
Anyway, so yeah, it was a really good day. But you want to talk about it, like, from a football standpoint? You want to get into it?
Yeah, let's talk about it from a football standpoint. This game was it was weird at first. Still that's me still speaking observationally. Like so this is the thing I said out loud to my friend Will, maybe by the end of the half, where I was like, man, I've never been so frustrated to be winning. It was just because it was just kind of weird. It was a little sloppy. I think we felt some of the injuries more so than we have in past games, and maybe the stats show that a little bit, but the stats do say that we were never in any position to be in trouble. I will say that. But other than that, it was just kind of, I guess the eye test gave me that perception. Is there, what can you show me from these stats that either tells me that's true, tells me I'm full of shit, or whatever?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what you just said about, you know, the how much in trouble we felt like we were was not reflected in the stats or the sort of score. I think that's sort of a theme of what I want to talk about today,
Mm-hmm,
because you're right. I mean, not even the advanced stat really. The advanced stats capture this as a blowout.
yeah.
UGA's lowest win expectancy was 94.4%. I think, basically after I'm gonna say the last touchdown before the half, the 2-minute drill touchdown, it went back up to 97, and it
Mm-hmm.
basically stayed around 99 the entire time. So UGA was winning this game emphatically the whole time. In fact, per EPA, one of UGA's best days on the season.
Yeah.
Offensive EPA 22.42, 21.93 EPA overall. Those are both very good, and we did that on 70 plays. We held Mizzou to negative 13.54 EPA, negative 10.78 offensive EPA, which is I know that sounds bad, and it is. That's actually one of the better days that an offense has had against us this year per net average EPA or whatever. Not net, but just average EPA. When we look at scrimmage plays, yards, all the sort of classic stats, UGA had a few more plays, but they outgained Mizzou almost 2-1, 510 yards to 263. 30 passes on the day for UGA, so that was an over-under win for me. 48% passing, 52% rushing. A very balanced day. It's weird. Just I have a lot of stuff to talk about, and not all of
Mm-hmm.
it's positive from my takeaways. But the
Yeah.
stats don't catch a lot of that. We're going to talk about the run game. UGA went 168 yards on 33 plays, average yards per play 5.09, but had a negative 2 EPA on runs. Negative 0.009 EPA running the ball. So that, I guess, is one thing that EPA catches that our sort of advanced stats catch that sort of I would like to talk about. Let's see. UGA continues to dominate the middle eight. Really kind of underperforming in the first quarter, but dominating the middle eight. They ran 14 middle eight plays for 9.81 EPA total, 0.70 EPA per play, which is very, very good. Held Missouri to 6 middle eight plays, which is very good. So it's one of those games. It's a game where it's look, you're the number one team in the nation. You come in, you play kind of a crappy first quarter, and you win 43-6, and it's an unequivocal blowout. So
Mm-hmm.
on the one hand, there's not a lot of concern. There's not a lot of concern for that, right? I mean, Missouri had a defensive stop rate of 8%. UGA had a defensive stop rate of 45%, which is actually pretty low for UGA on the day, right? UGA had 11 havoc plays. They had 8 tackles for loss, right? They didn't give up any. They only gave up 3 tackles for loss, all on rushing plays. UGA's offense only surrendered 1 interception. So I don't know, man. It's just I'm having a hard time. I'm having a hard time getting, we do the thing where we're here's the advanced stats, here's how that squares with our eye test. And it's that's hard on this game.
Mm-hmm.
It's really, really hard. And, if we look at our offensive concepts, which I want to get into a little bit more, UGA continues to just pound inside zone read. 19% play share for 41.67 success rate. That's not that good, right? Inside power. Mm-hmm. Almost a 10% play share. They ran it 6 times on the day. 33% success rate. So, I think the story of the game for me, if you want to take away, what does this mean for us going forward? I don't want anyone to accuse me of being too negative. Obviously, you're the number one team in the nation by pretty much every measure, and that didn't change. But I think we're starting to see a couple of chinks in the armor when it comes to this offense in the run game. And I think, 33% success rate on inside power against a team that's a pretty bad defensive team, especially against the run, it's concerning, right? I don't think there's any way to equivocate on that. And for all of the success that you're having in the passing game right now on deep shots, which you are, right? And that's great. You're going to have to beat man coverage because teams are selling out to beat you on the run. I just think, the guard play, especially in the center play, has got to improve when it comes to the run blocking game. And I would say in particular in the first quarter, which is, I think, also kind of starting to become a little bit of a pattern, right? We just have kind of sleptwalked, especially in terms of run blocking. We've been sleepwalking basically through the first quarters of games and then kind of pulling them out and running away with them. And it's one of those things where it doesn't show in the stats, but it's still something to worry about because we worry. That's what we do.
We do. It's normal. It's normal as a Georgia fan, as a Georgia sports fan in general.
that's that's a big picture stats overview. I mean, do you have anything to add for that? Any other games you want to talk about before we get into like just observations for this game?
We do you want to come back around to the other game just because I think that well no let's do this actually yeah I like where your head's at because we can try and talk a little bit about a game that matters a lot to us potentially in the next 4 weeks that happened this weekend as well. It's the LSU and Alabama game, and that is a game that should have been statistically speaking a a big old blowout for Alabama, but it was not. Alabama only won 20-14, and near the end of the game, it looked like they were about to lose it. They just couldn't get their offense started. What can you tell me? I guess this is a good reference point. I guess so. Providing a reference point for this Missouri team who had a first quarter that was a good defensive outcome for them. Let's compare that, I guess, to this LSU defense who had just a stellar game against Alabama's offense, which seems to be the one thing that they are most proud of doing the last few years, is like having a productive offense. So what can you kind of tell me, I guess, to provide a point of reference when we talk about this Missouri game?
Well,
If possible.
it's one of those things where, yeah, no, absolutely. So,
Yeah.
Bama's win expectancy got as low at times as 79. In the third quarter, they got down to 76. So, for a game that, like you said, in some ways probably should have been a blowout, it makes sense, right? Bama had -4 offensive EPA on the day. They had -4.6 penalty EPA, which, that's
It is what it is.
odd. That's rare for Alabama. -6.82 special teams EPA. They missed a couple of kicks. They missed an extra point and a couple of field goals. It's one of those things where, like, on a per play scrimmage plays basis, Bama actually underperformed LSU per EPA. They were only outgained LSU by 6 yards. They only outgained yards per play against LSU by 0.75 or whatever. So, I mean, my sort of like advanced stats takeaway comparing these two games across from each other is that LSU has we'll say uneven defense, right? They've had some good games and some bad games, but the fact that they were able to so effectively shut down Alabama's offense probably does bode well. Now, Alabama has a lot of good players, and I actually think Bryce Young is quite a good player.
Mm-hmm.
But I think they've got Michi and they've got Williamson or Jameson. Sorry, their other sort of like star wide receiver that they just have apparently cloned in a factory. I guess just the same wide receiver over and over again. Like 6'3" and is impossible to tackle and runs well after the catch and can really burn you. Anyway, I don't know how they keep getting that same guy, but neither here nor there. So I'm not saying that we in a theoretical SEC championship matchup should discount Alabama, but this is not the performance of a traditional, dominant number one Alabama, if that makes sense. I mean, and even if we look, as of right now, I don't have the updated CBC R squared, like what that would look like for this week. But even if we look at SP Plus on the year, currently UGA is first with a 31.4 overall rating, and Alabama is third with 27.1. That's a 4-point gap, right? That's, I mean, it's not huge, but for Alabama, I mean, when's the last time that when's the last time that any advanced metric would have given you UGA over Alabama on a neutral field by 4 points? It's been a while.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think that this Alabama team is gettable. I don't know that I would predict that we're going to get them because I have trauma that I have not yet worked through on every level. But I think that what the numbers see and what your eye shows you is that this is a very talented team that's been very inconsistent and has had some like structural problems defensively and is at sometimes just sort of like stupefyingly, confusingly had bad offensive performances. Now, if you had to count on can Nick Saban get a good offensive performance out of this team, then the answer would be almost certainly yes, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in that sense, I don't know how much to take away from it, right?
Yeah.
But I think, and that's just because I'm broken on like a pretty fundamental level psychologically when it comes to this stuff. But if I was a neutral fan, I mean, I think I would be kind of just by the numbers that we follow when we want to make accurate predictions, I would have to predict a UGA win.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's sort of where I am. I mean, and I mean, I don't know. Let's get back into the actual Missouri game because I don't want to
Yeah.
get too far afield, and we'll have an
Oh yeah.
FCC championship preview if it comes to that. But at this point in the season, despite, and I guess just to set up what we're about to talk about, despite all the sort of gripes or things that we're about to say about the game and about UGA as a team right now, from the biggest standpoint, UGA is the number one team. They're the number one team by a healthy margin in most statistical metrics or categories that you want to look at, advanced stats metrics or power ranking metrics. And I mean, life is good, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think you
Feels
got to
really
also
good.
just enjoy the ride. Yeah. And so nothing that we're about to say takes away from that. It's just, if we're going to be intelligent, consumers of college football and we want to predict what's going to happen, we have to look at things, not just where things are going well, but where they're not. So are you ready for some observations?
Hit me with those observations.
So one thing I think that is very obvious to me was very obvious to me on rewatch and just thinking about sort of how the last few games have gone.
Mm-hmm.
But even as I was sitting there watching the game live, is that UGA has just not been playing very well in the first quarter. Now, I think some of that has to do with play scripting, right? Your first couple of drives on the day are usually scripted, right? You decide what they're going to be beforehand. And the fact of the matter is that a lot of our play scripts in the first quarter, the first couple of drives have been run heavy, and we're just not executing our bread and butter inside zone runs very well. And so obviously, I think some adjusted play scripting to sort of try to open up the middle of the field a little bit more. And if you're going to continue to run those inside runs between the guards and the center would help. But also, as much as I love Todd Monken, I don't really love sort of what that says about where we are as a team. I think that, I mean, this is also just my opinion, and Todd Monken knows way more about offense than I do, but I sometimes sense that UGA is willing to sort of like keep things in the bag schematically, which is totally fine. Everybody does it. But I think UGA is very conservative when it comes to trying to do that. And I mean, the fact of the matter is that it just hasn't worked, right? Yeah. Getting out there and running inside zone, running like bluff read, inside power, and then like flood variations, your three most common plays on the first three plays of the game. That's not going to lead to success against teams that know how to scheme. And even Missouri, as a not very good team, knows how to scheme. Now, Missouri couldn't take advantage of it, but we've been scoreless in the first in I think the last four conference games in the fourth quarter. I mean, we scored with 43 seconds left in the first, yes, but you know what I'm saying. So at this point, I think it's a pattern, right? And I think a lot of that pattern has to do with the fact that the offensive line, a lot of people have been saying, and it's true, but I think that it bears sort of like talking about in reverse, because people have been saying lately, oh, well, the offensive line is blocking better as the game goes on. That's totally true. But part of the reason that they have the opportunity to block better in the run game is that they haven't been blocking well at all in the first half and first quarter, especially to begin with, right? They are very good pass blocking, pretty much have been most of this year, right? They had a couple of whiffs against Missouri that were kind of, but in particular, I think the run blocking between the guard and the center has just been not good. And I don't actually think that it's just a guard center thing. I mean, what I'm seeing a lot on these inside zone reads is that the backside pressure is what's getting these, like, we have a lot of running backs getting tackled from behind, right? Where it's just like you take a stutter step in order to try to see what hole develops and sort of like hit the hole. But as you take your stutter step, you get hit by the defensive end from behind. And so sometimes that's tight ends blocking or it's tackle blocking. But either way, it's not good when your most run play on the year, which is also your most run play in a game, 19% of your play share, that was inside zone read against Missouri, and 10% of your yard share, right? So that's not an efficient play for you, right? 41% success rate, right, on inside zone read variations. And I mean, that's just not, you don't want a play that you're running almost 20% of the time to only be responsible for 10% of the yards gained. Right. And so at this point, I don't know, and I'm not smart enough to tell you whether or not the answer is work on the actual, schematics of the play, or if it's change up the play scripting that we need in the game, or it is make some changes at offensive line. But I mean, what I was seeing when I rewatched like the compressed offensive plays for Georgia. And what I saw a lot of is it seems like the guards and Van Pran get confused on double teams, because a lot of times these inside zones will involve like double team one guy and then one of the offensive linemen helping with the double team, a lot of times the center, will go up to the second level, or guard will go up to second level and try to get a linebacker. And so what we saw a lot on Saturday was there was a guard going to take out a linebacker, and then there was a defensive tackle behind him running at the running back. So that's a communication thing. So I don't really know what the answer is right now. Now, on the plus side, in run blocking, I thought that the 2 goal line touchdowns looked really good. There was like a wildcat touchdown from James Cook that was very well blocked.
That was
The
really
sort
cool.
of jumbo, yeah, it was very well designed play. The jumbo package touchdown. Jordan Davis continues to be an excellent offensive tackle. He had like basically a wall block where he just like turned the whole left side of the line inside on that Zamir White and just set up the whole thing. So on the Zamir White touchdown. So that's short area goal line running game has been an area where UGA in the past few years has been pretty bad at. So I think it's okay to say that that's going well, but ultimately I don't understand how it is that you can have so many misses on a play that you're running 20% of the time, right? And I don't say that with frustration. I say it more just with like, there has to be an answer to this, because that is literally your actual bread and butter, right? People overuse the term literally, but like this is the play you run the most. You cannot afford to have so many 1 and 0 yard games, so many stuff rate problems on that play. Do you want me to just go through all of these right now, or do you
Sure,
have
yeah.
anything to say about the run game?
I mean, specifically about the run game. No, hold on. No, you can keep moving.
Okay. I don't want to just talk for like 15 minutes.
No, you're fine. I mean, I know you're running through your notes and everything. So, I mean, there's nothing that stuck out that I wouldn't, for me to add necessarily, other than what you've said. So you're good.
I want to talk about the QBs in the takeaway.
Yeah, that is the one thing that we can talk about for sure.
There's a lot to talk about with the QB position. I really think that the skill position talent on this team, if we just stick with the offense for a second, is incredible. In particular, I think the wide receivers are playing really well. Arian Smith looks like a real weapon. I felt like this is the game where it was like Kyrus Jackson looks like old Kyrus Jackson. Like he was running around, he had a lot of energy, he was getting open, he blocked like crazy for a guy of his size. Looks really great. Darnell Washington is a cheat code blocking. I think it was a Ladd McConkey screen touchdown where basically like at the snap, the play was over. It was a touchdown because Darnell Washington just ran up to the guy and tackled his ankles and he just fell down. And that was beautiful. And there was also a play that was like a wide run to the sort of right side of the formation where he just sort of got out in front and ran a guy 10 yards down the field. He looks really, really good. I don't know. He just looks really good right now. I think James Cook is a very, very patient runner. He can only do so much on these inside zone runs, but when you give him a crease, he is really good at working that crease. I think Zamir White continues to look really good, but I think he overcommits sometimes. And that is another sort of, not concerning, but another thing that bears watching going forward. He's an excellent running back, but sometimes he picks a hole and his game is not making something happen when there's nothing there. That's what I'll say, right? And he is a guy who is really good at working when you give him a little, but he's not a guy who is like a Nick Chubb, like there's nothing, I'm going to turn this into a 4-yard gain, which is fine, right? Like Nick Chubb's a once in a generation back, but it's just something to think about. I thought defensively kind of a weird day, right? Obviously you have a good success. I thought we felt Adam Anderson's absence, right? The ongoing legal situation, lost contain a couple of times. I thought not Nakobe Dean's best day. He looked pretty hesitant at times. He over pursued a couple of times. He only had 1 tackle on the day. He kind of just got lost in traffic a lot, which is weird. He was not doing that. Now, I will say, to kind of transition in Mizzou offensively, I actually think they did a lot of stuff very interesting that kind of put our defense in a bind, and they didn't really have the dudes to pull it off. But I think Tennessee is going to watch that tape. They did a lot of wide split, overloaded wide receiver stuff, diamond formation. They ran this formation where it was like 4 wide receivers to the wide side of the field, and like wide split stuff. That is like a Josh Heupel thing. I'm gonna imagine Tennessee is doing that, and I think the reason that Missouri was doing that is because they want to try to take our linebackers out of the play so that they can't just fill to the side and run sideline to sideline. So you put them all the way outside. It makes it harder for Kobe Dean and Quay Walker to get out there into the edge and tackle behind the line of scrimmage. I mean, we could talk about the QB battle. I see that you have a couple of notes to hear about just like how the game went from Missouri's time. What do you think? What are you
Oh
thinking?
yeah.
Any other notes that I'm missing?
The piece about playmaking, it definitely seemed so. I could see kind of from I was right behind each of the teams every time they were moving down the field the other way, and it definitely looked like they were like the holes created by this Missouri offensive line. They did a lot of really great stuff, and they were able to, you're right, like kind of cut off lanes for the defense because our defense, what they ended up having to do is like physically move people aside. Like I saw oftentimes just like instead of beating people around, which our team is more athletic than a lot of other teams, like you can't beat this team athletically. You have to beat them with play calling and scheming. And so it definitely seemed like there was a lot more like their team was physically cutting off lanes. They were doing a lot more cross routes. Yeah, it was just very interesting to kind of see what kind of spots were kind of made for their team to actually make moves. It didn't end up mattering in the long run, but it was interesting in the very early game. You're right, like that first quarter and into some of the second, the way that the Missouri offense was able to kind of do something, and I think that's kind of what kind of led to that perception of it looking kind of sloppy. Uh, you know, the piece about Zamir White, you mentioned Zamir White overcommitting, and I don't know if this is actually in any way related to that. It isn't actually, but you can kind of see this translated in. There was a play, I believe, in the third where he went for a block, and he blocked this guy so low that he like physically lifted and threw this man over him. Did you get to see that?
Was this Darnell Washington?
No, it was Zamir White.
Oh, Zamir White? No, I didn't see that one.
I'm pretty sure it was. That's what I had in my notes. Like he got super low and just started lifting and lifted this dude over him and kind of threw
Yeah,
him up through the air.
that dude is like a power lifter type, right?
Yeah, yeah. The other observations and kind of just watching the game, like Missouri, I am so proud and so impressed by Georgia not getting involved in the scrappiness of what this game almost became at parts, because Missouri at the very beginning was acting, I put down in my notes, real chippy for a team that was only up 3 points, and they were acting real chippy that only had 3 points, and they were acting real mouthy for a team down 40 points at one point. So I saw some of the Missouri guys trying to get like Georgia guys goat, but it just didn't work. And I think that's just a lot of really great discipline, something they've really worked on. It's just not worth it. And so that, yeah, I was very, very impressed with all of that. What else you got as far as takeaways?
Well, you have this note of Sawyer being out,
Oh, yeah.
being
Yeah.
really showing, and I think you're right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It was
I
definitely, yeah, that's
okay.
all. I mean, just the injuries showed
Yeah,
more in this game than in past games,
yeah.
and it
I
has
think
not
you
been as
can't.
obvious.
I think it's clear at this point that like Sawyer is probably our best offensive lineman, and that he is like sort of the heart and soul of that offensive line. And
Hmm.
so hopefully he's back soon, right? Is what I
Yeah.
will say. Um, hold on one second.
Yep.
All right. Oop, I forgot to tweet that we were doing this. My bad. um, so I, let's start about takeaways. So I guess we can end on the QB situation. One
Hmm.
thing I wrote is that like this is the number one SP plus team in the nation, about a point and a half in front of the number two team, Ohio State, 31.4 point SP plus number, 31 and a half points better than the average team on an average field, on a neutral field. Number six on offensive SP plus, number one in defensive SP plus. We've beat 40 points over an average team defensively for the first time this year. So everything we're about to say about the quarterback situation
Hmm.
has to be tempered with the fact that this is unequivocally the best team in the nation right now. Right?
Yes.
You saw an insane weekend of chaos all across the country, and this was the one team that just, whatever else we want to say, pretty much held serve, beat the crap out of a team it should have beat the crap out of, and then got out of there. So, sometimes I might get accused of being, we'll say, a little overly critical
Hmm.
from time to time in both my personal and professional lives. So please understand that I think the core of this conversation is you have to beat Ohio State and Alabama to win the national title. Nothing that we're about to talk about is probably going to affect any game other than those two games, except for maybe Tennessee. So keeping in mind that this is really a forward-facing conversation and not a backward-facing conversation is important. The point of this conversation is not to impugn skills or abilities of anybody, especially Stetson and JT. Just my observation. So I'm going to give you some things that I saw. I'd like to hear your thoughts about where we are. What do you think should happen when I get done? All right. All right. So the first thing I think, so just thinking about both of them, Stetson, I thought he played a really good game in some ways. He threw some really nice deep balls, but I think he got bailed out a couple of times. He threw a sort of a sideline, I think it was a wheel route from Kenny McIntosh that probably should have been a touchdown that he underthrew. Well, no, he overthrew it. He was way over his head, and McIntosh had like a really nice one-handed catch. And if he throws that ball in stride and in the right place, it's probably a touchdown. He got bailed out by Jermaine Burton on one of those deep passes that probably should have been intercepted. I think there was a Brock Bowers catch across the middle that was just like the guy was right there and like probably could have been intercepted. So he's still a guy that kind of puts the ball up 2 or 3 times, 2 or 3 times a game. And I think it's kind of evidenced by the fact that he threw for a half. In one half, he threw 19 passes. So that's, we'll say a half and one drive. He threw 19 passes. So that kind of works out to like 35, 40 passes a game, which is more than we have been in the past where he was throwing like 20 passes. But still, despite how good he was, 13 for 19, 255, 2 interceptions, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, 88 QBR, 13.42 yards per play, 1.2 EPA per play, 22 EPA added. Those are all 68% success rate, 6% win percentage share added. So an incredible stat line. I don't mean to take away from what is probably his best game of the year, but there were just some games. There were a couple of balls that if he'd thrown them differently, or one thing differently had happened, would have been intercepted. Which, look, I get it if wishes were fishes or whatever, but I think it's worth talking about because Missouri's not the best defense we're going to play, or the most talented defense we're going to play over the next few games. I would say Stat looks really good on deep balls. He can really throw. Like I think his sort of like sweet spot is 10 to 15 yards behind downfield on the sidelines, or sort of like improvising out of the pocket in front of him, right? Like if he can get anybody running across the field parallel to his sort of track as he rolls out of the pocket, he's pretty dangerous. But I will say, and I am not a QB whisperer, and I'm not claiming to be, but I do think that like he still is not comfortable throwing over the middle of the field. He's not very good at it, that's why he's not comfortable at it, right? And I don't know that he works. Like he's really good at running under duress, and he really saved himself his legs several times, which you can't take that away from him. But I don't know how good he is at working to a second or third option or trying to work back to other routes under duress, which nobody is. But we're talking about the number 1 team in the nation, so yeah. I think there's a pretty high bar of scrutiny that we can point at these guys. JT looked really rusty, right? The interception he threw was behind his receiver. If he throws it in front of his receiver, it's probably a gain for a pretty good game. I thought he had some really good audibles at the line. I think one of the touchdowns he threw, he audibled into a little screen. He checked at the line into it, and he threw it really well. He throws across the middle of the field well. Even rusty, you can tell he just is making good decisions, even if like mechanically maybe it's not there. Or there were a couple of times where like he had a play action, or he had a deep bomb that he didn't get out in time that he probably should have thrown away. But I thought for his first game back after like basically a month and a half off, he looked really good. That's where we are, right? I'm not going to say that JT is like the perfect replacement for Stetson, or that Stetson doesn't bring anything. I think if the question is who can you take into Tennessee and beat Tennessee with, then yeah, I think you can do that with Stetson. I'm a little worried about Tennessee. I think they're a pretty good team. But I think we can still beat them with Stetson. But if the question is who can get you through SEC championship, college football semifinal, college football championship, I probably still feel better about JT. The
Yeah.
fact that we saw JT in this game, even if we waited until the second half when the game wasn't in doubt, makes me think that he still has a shot at it, right? That he still has a shot to get this job back.
Yeah.
I after seeing it, I trust what Kirby said, that he hasn't been practicing as well, or that he's not back to full form. I don't think he's hurt, but I do think that it's worth saying that he probably is not back at preseason form yet. So I don't know. Where's your head at here?
I mean, everything you said is true. It's. I think the moment that JT stepped foot on the field, it seemed like, not that he was in his own head, because that's me just projecting, but he definitely seemed rusty. You're right. I'll also add that every snap he took in that first drive was a bad snap. Like, one was by his hip, another was too high, one was too low. Like, they were all in the wrong place, and so he was cleaning up past that too. That just might be part of the game, but it might have been me being overcritical and watching a little bit more intently than I normally do when someone steps foot on the field. But that definitely added to it, I think. But everything you said about Stetson, like if Stetson was not able to run, I don't think he'd be starting. I think we would have been seeing a different backup quarterback in this position if he wasn't able to run and clean up the way he does with his legs, because the guy is too short to throw over the line consistently. He's as tall as I am, and he's playing with a bunch of dudes as tall as you are. Or in the fiction you've created, the other way around. He is as tall as you are, playing with a bunch of guys as tall as I am. So that just doesn't add up. So if the thing, and that's why so often I feel Stetson throws slightly behind, he throws too far, and that's why we're put in these positions where we say, man, Stetson had a really good deep ball, because if he has athletes that are running the routes they're supposed to route and they're beating their guys consistently, which these Georgia players are, Stetson has a very good day. And I think that is the big difference between the two players with different ceilings, is like one of them does what they're supposed to do and they do well as long as people are doing their jobs too, and the best do well regardless. And they make others around them better. They make plays. And I don't think that that's necessarily Stetson's strong suit. I think he's a good play manager. I think he cleans up the way he needs to, but it only goes so far. So I think you're right in saying that we'll be fine against Tennessee. I am afraid to see how Tennessee fans will react, just because they've been real nasty all season, even to their own team. And so I am kind of concerned about that and concerned about unnecessary injuries. But
Yeah.
I guess we'll see what happens. It's a weird time. I'll also note that it seems, and this might be me just projecting again, and I'd love to see if there's any statistical backup for this. It seems that in games where Stetson is the clear starter because there is no one else behind him, he does better than on days where he could be benched. And I felt like that was true for this game. And then earlier in the season when he was the starter, clearly because JT was hurt and he could not start, it was a very different time. But you're right also in saying that this was Stetson's best game on the season, at least by the numbers. And so it's weird. It's all a weird, messy mess. And I wish we just knew what was going on so that we can stop speculating about it. Because it's something we talk about every week, and it's become more than it had to, I feel, because we don't have any actual answers.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. And I think one thing you said that was really cogent and accurate is just you see Stetson's performance is not necessarily reflected in the stats.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's totally part of it. And I think you have to, we can't see practice, right? And it's such a dumb media cliche to say that. And I think at this point, in some ways, I think JT's performance kind of validated Kirby Smart's decision making, because that looked like a guy that probably wasn't back up to speed in practice. Wow, how did I do this to my hair? Anyway, oh my God, what have I done? I'm like a rooster. All right, sorry. I just got really frustrated about the quarterback situation. But I think you're right. It's if he can't run, he's sunk. Yeah. And normally that doesn't matter because he can run.
Yeah.
But in a situation where I think one of the reasons, the faster the guys you're playing against get, the slower you are, right? Mm-hmm. So the fact, and I think that was a really smart thing you said about if he couldn't run, he would already be out. Well, the problem is, of course, that if you play a truly elite defense, which we might not have to play, to be fair, like there are not a lot of truly elite defenses in the nation this year, and there certainly aren't a lot remaining on the schedule. But when you have to play a truly elite defense, which, you know, Bama's defense is not elite, but they're definitely top 10 per SP plus, and they have a bunch of 5-stars. When you play that kind of defense, you get slower. Everybody on your team gets slower. And like, that's what UGA has been winning on this year, right? Teams are slower when they play us because everybody on our defense is a 5-star or can just run anyway, right? So like right now, UGA's defensive SP plus score is 8.8, giving up 8.8 points per play against, or 8.8 points against an average team, basically. And Bama's, that's first. Bama's is ninth at 15.2. That's still top 10, right? And you know, of other teams that we might see on the year, I guess theoretically Texas A&M is 13.9, is fifth. Let's see, Ohio State 17.4 is 13th, right? We might theoretically Cincinnati 15.9 is 11th. So those are all teams, and by comparison, if you want to go down to Missouri, this Missouri team we just played, Missouri's defensive SP plus score is 31.4, which is 100th. So this is all sort of a obtuse way of saying that the runs that Stetson makes against teams that we beat so easily may or may not be there as often. Now, a lot of times Stetson's sort of genius is that he runs at the right time. He knows when to just, I think he does a really good job of seeing when, like, hey, there aren't any guys on that side of the field, and even their super fast 5-stars aren't going to be able to get over here before I just sort of scamper out of the pocket, which that kind of thing is great. But like, I don't know that he's going to be able to reliably extend plays against every team that we're going to play. And we've seen running quarterbacks have that problem against Georgia. And we're not going to play anybody with Georgia's defense. But I think that really things start to break down in his game when you get there, right? When you get to the point where he no longer has the speed advantage with his feet, that's when problems start.
Yeah.
Well, I guess we'll have to see. It sucks. It's one of those things where like it sucks because like my attitude with this podcast is always like, if we just throw data at it and we try to we try to be as objective as possible, and we try to just extract the narratives and be the smartest football fans we can make an accurate prediction a lot of the time. The problem is that like I can tell you based on what I think and what I can infer that the coaches think based on usage what I think should happen, right? Which is I think JT should probably take this job back eventually, and I think he will. But since I don't have access to practice and I'm not like a football guy in that sense, I can't really tell you what's going to happen. And so it's like one of those things where, you know, I expect Stetson will probably start against Tennessee. I think being in Neyland it's a rough place to play, both physically and mentally. And so it wouldn't shock me to see if JT got some time.
Yeah.
And I think we're going to have to just watch practice reports closely.
So following this past game, though, do you think that we get a switch, or do we see Stetson start again in the same way we saw this game start?
I did not think at all that there was going to be a switch. I fully expected to see Stet on the field against Missouri on the first day, on the first play of the game. I'm not saying that I think that the switch is going to happen, but it feels way more possible. You know, you want a steady, maybe reliable option when you're in Neyland, so that would maybe be an argument for starting Stet. But I think that if you see JT getting snaps at all, that means he's practicing better. And not all recovery from injuries is linear, but if his recovery is linear and he keeps getting better and better, we know that at his best, he's already beaten Stetson out for this job. So I think as we go on and we get into Tennessee and Charleston Southern, it becomes more and more likely that he starts. I think I would probably still put odds of Stetson being the starter at above 50%, but I think it's probably more like 60-40 than like 70-30, right? Where he just, the more time he gets in practice to reacclimate with just the speed of the game, the more time he gets to feel healthier, the more time he, you know, gets comfortable in his body again, the more likely he is to pass Stetson, because we know objectively that he's done it before.
Yeah. Exactly. Here's some prediction reviews for you.
Yeah, let's do it.
There was an over-under, Zamir White, 99.5 rushing yards. We both said over. He had less, didn't he? He didn't have more than that.
Hey, look, He had like 14 or something. He did not do well in the day.
Yeah,
Actually.
that's what I thought. Like everybody had way. You
For
highlighted. That's why I was
for
like,
the
wait a minute.
day, he had 9 carries for 14 yards and 1 touchdown, 1.56 yards per play, negative 0.15 EPA per play, negative 1.32 EPA on the day total, and 33% success rate. Not great. Not
Well,
great, Bob.
dang. Connor Blazelack, is how I wish it were pronounced. 148 and a half passing yards. We all said under. That's correct. 2.5 Georgia plays with 50 plus rushing yards. I said under. You said over. Well, they were all like right under,
Yeah,
which is
so
a
you
real
got that
shame.
one.
Zero point 0.5 JT Daniels snaps. We both said over and felt good. Over under Georgia 1.5 defensive touchdowns. It was under. 9.5 passes for Georgia. It was over. It was not a run all day kind of game. There were plenty of passes. Stet had plenty of yards thrown through the air, which was great. Plenty of bombs. 3.5 hours game time. We were out of there by 3:15. That game was the final buzzer.
That game blew by. So that puts let's see. So you had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 correct, and I had 1, 2, 3, 4 correct. So you went well. You win the week, except I think it's a tie because I predicted the final score at 45-7. You predicted at 42-3, and I think I was like literally 1 point less in absolute error.
I think that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Damn.
good job by us. We're very close. I was let's see, 4 points off total, and you
Football.
were what?
I just said football.
Yeah, you were only, let's see, 7 points off. So those are both very good. So now it's time for everyone's favorite segment, Ask CBC, presented by a sponsor that we don't have yet. So please hit us up.
Hey, hit us up with that sponsor money.
Would you like to start us?
Yes. We have an email coming in from Jonathan Fuller. And in my mind earlier, I was thinking about this, that I really wish I could, if I am really good at my job as an editor, at this point, I would just play, really not even good at my job. If I'm not lazy about this, this is where like a very formal, like piano music will start playing as I read out this very formal email. Actually, going forward, everybody who emails us, I would love it to be in some very like formal old English style, please, so that we can read it with pomp and circumstance. And I will play a beautiful song underneath it. So,
I will say, hold on, let me add one thing to that.
yes.
I'm pretty good at Middle English. I'm okay at Old English. If you do anything before about like Beowulf era, Beowulf era, then I have a problem. So just dialectically, I need somewhere between Beowulf and like about 1650 if you want me to do it accurately. All right, carry on.
All right. Jonathan Fuller asks, greetings. I hope your witness of the Tiger Romp was enjoyable. Also, I have a question. How many Nathan's hot dogs could fit into Neyland Stadium versus how many Nathan Lawrence's could fit into Neyland Stadium? Please assume the following. All Nathan's hot dogs are 6 inches, whole, unpackaged, naked. Nathan's famous boneless, skinless Franks. All Nathan Lawrence's are fully grown. The weight of stacking objects will not compromise objects' structural integrity. 4. There is no lid on the stadium. Stacking can continue until Nathan's, dog or man, begin to fall from the rim of the stadium. So yeah, that's the question from Jonathan Fuller. And you've done many maths.
Well, I did some rough math, and this is wrong because I didn't take the time to do the actual equation for how much I should subtract for rounded corners on the rectangular surface of Neyland. And I don't know Neyland's actual height at the top rim. And I've done a lot of research about what the top rims, how high up the top rims of stadiums are. And also I've been to Neyland a few times, so I can give you like a rough estimate. So these are rough estimations. Also, I didn't want to weigh myself to get my exact displacement because that felt a little like body negative and I don't want to be. So I did some rough estimations, but I can give you some back of the napkin math on this. You ready?
Do not look at Discord until you are done with this. Take your eyes off Discord.
Okay.
And I'm going to hit you with the the hottest breaking news right afterwards.
All right. So, based on some rough estimates, which is that I got on Google Maps and I used the map measuring tool to measure the satellite image of Neyland stadiums. And I just used the basically length time width times height to get the cubic meters that that we would need. So it is 81,615,600 cubic feet, roughly. I estimated the height of Neyland at 150. It does not seem that high, but a lot of the stadium is under street level, and the average stadium height, based on what I was able to research, the tallest top of the stadium claims to be Ohio State's Horseshoe, which I think is something like 220. I've seen 160, 140, 130 for a lot of the others. So I put it at 150 just as a rough estimation of height at the top rim of the stadium. So that gives it, let's see. That gives us 24,876,434.88 cubic meters, roughly. Assuming that the average human has a displacement of 62,000 cubic centimeters, based on the average human's weight in grams, or 0.62 cubic meters. Now let's make it 0.75 meters, given that I'm a huge human. So 685,798.4 Nathans would fit in Neyland, given perfect stacking / compression and structural integrity. Now, each hot dog, each Nathan's, they're not boneless. That was a weird thing to add, but each Nathan's hot dog,
boneless, skinless Franks.
Per the information I looked up on the Nathan's Famous Hot Dogs website, which was a surprisingly compelling website. Each of their standard hot dogs is 3.5 ounces, which is about 100 grams. It's 99 point something. But that's 0.001 cubic meters, which basically means that each Nathan holds 750 Nathan's Famous Hot Dogs. So at the end point, Neyland Stadium holds 248,764,348,800 Nathan's Famous Hot Dogs and 331,635,798.4 Nathan's Lawrence's attorneys general. Now, that also, I think, sort of assumes that like every Nathan is perfectly stacked and there's no wasted space. Also, those numbers are both probably high because Neyland Stadium is not a regular rectangle, but has like, it's sort of like an oblate rectangle with the corners cut off, and I didn't take the time. I think you would probably take like 8 to 10% off of both of those numbers. All right, can I look at the Discord now?
You may. Guess what just happened? Todd Grantham has just been let go, along with the offensive line coach for Florida. What's his face? John Hevesy? How do you say his name? I don't even know that guy.
Hevesy. This is my greatest nightmare because now I have to talk about actual football and not hot dog mathematics, which is what I want to talk about.
Oh, I just think it's
why cruel world, why must you distract me from my art? I am making hot dog art. I am the Jackson hot dog, the Jackson Pollock of bad hot dog math. And yes,
these boneless, skinless Franks.
Yes, the Jackson Pollock of bad hot dog math is called Jackson hot dog. That was not a sopolism.
That's a real
They're
thing.
firing Ted Grantham. What?
Nathan's having a stroke.
Solepism? No, that's solepism. I think that's what it's called. Or a spoonerism.
I believe you.
No, solepism is the whole thing that like the self is all that can be known to exist. No, spoonerism is when you say you say something that you don't mean to say. It's like a verbal typo.
Oh, okay,
which,
gotcha.
Ironically, that last thing was a spoonerism about spoonerisms. Anyway, but yes, I am Jackson Hot Dog, the Jackson Pollock of hot dogs. Bad hot dog math. Do you want to talk about Todd Grantham before we?
Yeah. I think it's wild that I don't know, maybe it's not that wild that the assistant coaches are going before big dumb Dan Mullen.
Well, I mean, I think everybody assumed that they would fire Todd Grantham at the end of the season as like the sort of sacrificial sort of offering to stave off. Like he was going to be the like paraffin coated effigy that they burnt at the end of the season to get the smell out of the room. But
he was the sage.
This kind of, yeah, they were going to smoosh, or what's it called? Smushing when you burn sage?
I guess. I don't know.
Anyway, hold on. I want to get that right because I know enough hippie types that someone's going to comment. Sorry, not smushing. Smudging. Yeah, he was like Todd Grantham is a human sage smudge. It strikes me as a little desperate. I don't know that it's going to save Dan Mullen's job. I will say, I think at this point they have to beat Florida State. If you lose to this Florida State team as Dan Mullen, you're gone.
He's gone.
You might get tarmacked. Like you might get Lane Kiffin if you lose to Florida State. I know I have not listened to anything from or looked at anything from Richard Johnson or Stephen Godfrey, who I'm sure would know more than me. But I don't know. I don't know that this is going to help if you're Dan Mullen. The team seems to have quit, right?
Yeah.
And who are the remaining games? Let's see.
Oh,
I know they're playing some body bag game.
Yeah, they have a body bag.
State. Yeah, so you're playing Samford, Missouri, and Florida State to the end of the season. You have to win all 3 of those games, basically.
Missouri might beat them.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think it depends on who starts, and they might actually be able to run on Missouri because they have a probably better interior offensive line when it comes to run blocking than we do. They're going to beat the crap out of Samford. I think they'll probably beat Missouri. They have to beat Florida State. They have to.
Yeah, if they lose to Florida State, Dan Mullen is 100% gone.
Well, and I think it also has to do with, like, I don't know what it's like to be a Florida fan at all, clearly. But I think if you're Florida and you look at where Florida State is right now, I think, like, you got to feel like we have to beat this team. Like, Mike Norvell has been a PR mess on and off. They aren't recruiting that well. They've recruited kind of, like, better, but they aren't recruiting super well. They have been miserable. Like, they are a program in disarray, Florida State is right now. I mean, it's a poorly kept secret that, like, the dog wags the tail over there, and that the former athletic director had a lot of problems with the boosters, and there's this, like, booster, like, CEO type over there. And so, like, that's all a long way of saying that, like, regardless of who should win, which is still probably Florida, but even if Florida State is favored and the advanced metrics like Florida State, like, Florida still has to win that game because of just a perception thing. Because I think where Florida State has been, I mean, like, it's like if you were Georgia and you were having a bad season and you lost to last year's Georgia Tech team, you would get fired, right? Because it doesn't really matter who should win or why you lost. What matters is that, like, Georgia fans just spent the last 11 months making fun of how Jeff Collins is, like, 4 feet tall and, like, talks too much about Waffle House, right? So, like, you can't afford to lose to that team when the perception is the way it is, right? And so I think that's really going to be kind of the season. It's going to be, like, kind of a career-defining game for Dan Mullen, I think, actually.
Easily, yeah.
But, you know, also, if he loses to Missouri, he's screwed anyway.
Yeah. It's also just a very odd kind of, I guess, logistically speaking thing, because you keep Dan Mullen, but you fire the defensive coordinator. And now you have this issue of you can't start hiring until people know whether or not Dan Mullen will be there at the end of the year. You could start hiring and recruiting people now, but now they're in this weird position. I mean, because why would you commit to that job if you didn't know who your boss was going to be, who's going to be leading the team at the end of the year? And the same goes the opposite way around. Like, if you get rid of Dan Mullen now, you could set an interim manager in there, an interim coach, and start hiring for his position now instead. And I mean, Todd Grantham's really not. I mean, who's going to harm the team more? I guess Todd Grantham or Dan Mullen is really what I guess they have more gas in his tank, is what they're thinking.
I guess you have to assume that the only guy who they have as, like, an assistant head coach is Tim Brewster, who is their tight end coach. So there's not, like, an obvious guy to step up into that spot. I know Garrick McGee's the quarterback coach, and they want to fire him too. Christian Robinson he's a former Georgia player, ironically. He's probably, I think, the guy that, like, perception-wise is faring the best on that defensive staff. He's a pretty good recruiter, so he might take over. I don't know. I mean, you're right. You can't hire anybody else, right?
No. Man.
You're pretty much sunk on that front. You're going to have to just go to an interim and hope that you get extended at the end of the year.
Is this the one? So what if Ed O comes over? What if he comes over?
I mean,
and becomes
Ed O's
the next
a really
Florida,
good defensive line coach. I don't know the last time that he I don't know the last time they actually coached defense, like, from a coordinator perspective. All right, do we want to get back to Ask CBCs? We can hit this when we know more.
Yeah,
we'll
absolutely.
Hit this next week.
Yeah,
I mean, obviously, LOL, Florida. I kind of hate it because I want Dan Mullen to get, like, permanently hired or whatever.
Oh yeah.
Right.
I've moved a couple of these to next week, so if you asked one and you're not hearing it today, it's because it's moved to the next show, just so you know, everybody listening. Next question comes from Abby. What was your favorite chaos football game on Saturday? Me personally, I absolutely loved the UNC and Wake Forest game. It was happening at the same time while we were there at watching the Georgia game for the most part, but I got to see like the last couple, maybe 20 minutes of playtime. Absolutely bonkers. Absolutely bonkers. That I think these teams probably would have been better off if they just left their offenses on the field, regardless of whether they were on offense or defense, just so they could get the offense back on the field faster. Because what a game!
All right, so
what a messy game.
Mine was Florida, South Carolina, but that was just because, like,
because Schadenfreude.
It is hard. It is hard to express It's hard to express the degree to which Florida got their ass whipped. Like, just absolutely quit, and that was really great. Do you want to do the puzzle question from Irk Russell? I know we're going to move his other question to the next show.
Yeah. Oh, this is that's actually a Christy in London question, I believe.
Oh, Christy. Yeah, sorry, Christy in London. So we're spoiling this as we go. All right, you ready? Who comes next in this sequence and why? Brock Vandegrift, Stetson Bennett IV, Jackson Muschamp, Carson Beck. If it helps, the sequence does continue from there, and the next answer after that would be Nakobe Dean, JT Daniels, Brock Bowers, and so on.
So it started with...
I think I figured it out. I'm pretty sure
Brock
I figured
Vandegrift,
it out.
Stetson Bennett. I have to look at it in... Hold on. I'm pulling it up so I can look at it.
I think I know, but I'm not going to say it because I want to not...
Brock Vandegrift.
Oh, yep, I figured it out.
I don't know it.
The answer is Lsu, I believe. Does that help?
Hold
because
on. No, go ahead.
Yeah, well, the one that tips it away is that Nakobe Dean, JT Daniels, and Brock Bowers is the giveaway. Because Nakobe Dean is jersey number 17, JT Daniels is 18, Brock Bowers is 19.
That's what I thought it was at
13,
first.
Jackson Muschamp was 14, Carson Beck's 15, and then 16 is Robert Beal. I think you could always also put David Daniel in there. I think he's 14 too, maybe off the top of my head.
Yeah, okay, yeah. I was like, maybe it's jersey numbers, and I was like, that's too easy. So I just let it go. I was like, there's something with their names. There's something with there was a BB and there was I don't know why. But
you went Da Vinci's Code when you really needed
I did,
to go like National Treasure.
It was like Brock Vandegrift, and there's a V in Stetson Bennett IV, and his last name is B as well.
Yeah.
So there's too much. Next question. Oh, a long time listener. I haven't had a question from him in a long time. Chapel Wable distribution. What's up with all the UGA fans getting angry that teams try to score in garbage time?
Well, I don't understand that. I think the three timeouts at the end of the game are defensible because if you're trying to have, you're trying to get some kind of continuity and you have a young quarterback and you're trying to prove every snap matters. We're going to play you to the end. We want to get you as many snaps as possible. Like if they ask Eli Drinkwitz, that's his answer, what his answer is going to be. And that's probably fine. Right. I mean, it'd be right. But I think the reason that fans are pissed is because I know like an in-stadium experience, it sucked because it's like, all right, we've been here for 3 hours. The game's been over for like 45 minutes. If you're the kind of person who either has to be there because you're working the game in some capacity, or you're the kind of person who just like refuses to leave before the end of the game for just like superstitious reasons. I almost just said religious reasons, but I guess basically. If you're the kind of person who won't leave, it sucks when the game's been over for an hour and then you got this guy like calling timeouts in the end zone. So I totally understand why fans are upset, but I don't know. Like, I don't know that Kirby would really, like, I saw some people be like, oh, we're going to hang 60 on Missouri next year. I'm like, maybe we are, but like, honestly, like, I think if you truth sermed Kirby, he doesn't mind that he got his second string to care enough about preserving, no touchdowns or whatever, that they got out there and got some experience in a goal line situation. Like, I think that Well, Drinkwitz's reason for doing it is probably similar to why Kirby wouldn't be upset about it, which is that, like, if you really think that every stat matters and you really want to get as much experience in for every guy on the team, then yeah, putting your second team defense in a goal line stand situation it's good. I mean, it's good for your morale when, you know, your team does that and, you know, the sideline lights up. Although I will say, like, the sideline did not look very enthused. I think, honestly, pardon me. Sorry. Oh, man, that was a bad one. I think the first two timeouts were probably more explicable than the third one, which was kind of just like, guys, what are we doing? Like, what are we doing here? like it's fourth down. Just like, I mean, and it's like, I get it. You don't have a defeat formation. You don't take a knee in that point. But like, do you need the third timeout? I don't know. Yeah. I understand why people are upset, but I don't really, you know.
Next question. You ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
Arch Russell asked, how would Justin's life be different if he was actually 6'8"? You know?
It's yours to answer, my boy. Airline travel would be a nightmare.
It probably would
much
be.
I can tell you. No, that one I know from experience. The rest I can't answer.
I mean, that's all. I mean, you actually could answer this better than I could, I feel, because I don't know what it's like to be 6'8". I mean, anything that I need to reach, I feel like I can reach. So,
I think
what are the joys of being much taller, Nathan? You're 6'6", 6'5"?
I'm 6'5" and a half.
Okay.
And
what am I missing out on?
I mean, I actually think there's a like line of demarcation right around 6'6", where like when you're 6'5" or 6'6", things aren't really built to be your size. Like you don't fit in things the way you should sometimes, and that can be very like, I feel like shit about it.
Yeah.
But I think that like 6'7", 6'8", that's when you start getting into territory of like you're like the world was not designed for people your size, right? Like you're an NBA player size. Like I think that's kind of the line. It's like 6'8"-ish. But I think that a 6'8" person might have more problems than I do, like in a car where I already have still some problems in like a regular size car, or in you know, in an airline situation, or in like a roller coaster. Like roller coasters really suck for tall people.
Not really.
Hanging roller coasters are great. Hanging roller coasters, thumbs up, amazing. Could not recommend enough. But roller coasters where your feet are like inside of a cab, awful. But you know, what are the joys of it? I mean, look, frankly, like today I was trying to get some cranberry juice at Publix, and there was only like one left at the very back, and I think I got it just because I was the only person who could reach it. And like, certainly, I have received no small amount of romantic attention over my life because of my height, and in large part from my wife. So I'm not going to pretend like there aren't some advantages. Like, yeah. I mean, it's bad for back problems, good for your love life. Probably I'd say the big takeaway. Sucks to be in a car trip. Also, kind of sucks because like when you have like Sasquatch arms, it's just really easy to hit crap, just to destroy things. Oh
yeah, don't know where your arms are.
But you know, I think it's all trade-offs. I think the biggest thing for you would be that like you're sort of like you know, and this is not a sex thing. Before I say this, I want to say out loud, this is not a sex thing. I mean, this is a totally platonic thing. Okay,
go ahead.
So like, when you're married to someone, like you have a default like physical relationship, and I don't mean that in the sex way. I mean it in a like when Samantha is beside me, I know what a Samantha-shaped person feels like in relationship to my body, right? And one of the problems I have had in the past is that your wife is basically the same size as my wife, and I have like grabbed the back of her arm a couple of times because she's at the same height. But generally speaking, when Samantha's around me, like I kind of know what that is about. So I'm pretty sure if that changed like by a foot, I would just have no idea how to approach my wife physically in any way, like in a day in and day out basis. It's not a sex thing, and I want to say that again. If it was a sex thing, I would just tell you.
You know, sometimes the more you say it, it sounds like you were trying to convince me it's not more than just providing a disclaimer, as if you believe it is actually a sex
I mean,
thing.
No. Look, there would be a sex thing. I'm talking about I'm talking about like find your spouse in a crowd thing. And I know that even that could be a sex thing, but like that's a separate conversation. I'm talking about like, for instance, I'll give you an example. Because of the height difference, of my wife and I, Like cuddles are a very like Nathan is usually the big spoon person because I don't want to crush my wife, right? So if you were a foot and a half taller, you would have to think about that a little bit more. Is all I'm saying.
So we have a couple more questions here. We'll actually let me make sure because we're pretty deep into this show at this point.
We're deep in the paint.
I might move
deep in
both of
paint.
these. Move these green ones. Okay. So, with that concludes this episode's segment of Ask CBC. We'll have a few more that we move to the next show just because there are so many good ones, and we still have a bit to get through in this one. So the very first next segment, which is a weird way to say that, just the next segment.
Do you have voice aphasia? What is going on right now?
What is happening to me? I've lost control. So it is the triumphant return of Dr. James Beerfield. It's the, his troll corner, the one that's presented by Cheerwine. It's the wine that gives diabetes, TM. He has sent in his own note, it's not even the notes app. It's some other app that he's sent in that he has on his phone that even has an ad present. Like you have an app that does this already. I don't know why you had to download an additional app to do this, just to make it look like
my theory,
a yellow tablet.
Yeah, I think he downloaded a separate bad app. Like
just to mess with us
for this experience. Yes.
In true James Beerfield fashion. All right.
What a genius.
The title says sayings/jokes. It says, "I'm back, boys. Sorry for the hiatus. I've been busy cutting off foreskins." Okay.
That is
number one.
I think that is something that residents do in their OBGYN rotation. So it's actually possible.
How many foreskins? How many? No, never mind. I'm not going down that route. Number one, why is a new sound system being wasted on wind instruments instead of giving them to Souzas? I think you might have to get some context to this.
We have a new sound system for our front ensemble, which I think that James knows this, which is not wind instruments. It's for the synthesizers in the front ensemble, which are mallet instruments, and I think he's just trolling us. Why is it not? Well, because, right, like, geniuses are never recognized in their time, right? Part of being an auteur and doing the art that we do, our art,
not the hot dog math.
That's my art, but our art is the Sousa art that we're doing. And, I think every Sousa knows when they move in that, we are going to be a Van Gogh, right? Like, no one's going to love us in our time, but one day they'll have museums full of our stuff and everyone will have a phone case with our pictures on it. And that's the part of the burden of genius, right? That's what it is.
Next question. As an English teacher who makes a living teaching narratives, why do you hate football narratives, Nathan?
Because I don't want chocolate in my peanut butter. No,
I want toothpaste in my orange juice.
I love narratives, but I think that culturally and societally, narratives are manipulated to make people believe things that aren't true constantly. And while I certainly don't think that, the employing of underdog narratives or employing sort of like narratives to make the game seem closer than it is, those things don't, fundamentally undermine our democracy. But I do think similar manipulations of narrative structures do undermine our democracy pretty regularly, both in the United States and across the world. And I think that, when we use narratives to talk about sports and make them seem different than what we see, we are giving tacit permission for people in power to talk about the world and make the world different than what we see. We are giving them tacit permission to lie to our faces, right? Similarly to the idea that, like, when you start believing a small lie about yourself, you're giving yourself permission to believe big lies about the world, right? So, like, if there is like a public service component to this very, very stupid podcast, to me, it is to tell people and to help people approach football and sports and silly things in a way that is intellectually rigorous, which I think is what leads to better outcomes in things that actually matter.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the only time I'm going to be smart tonight. Back to hot dog math.
Back to hot dog math. A Missouriable poem, please.
Yeah, so I was going to read Tiger poem, Tiger Burning Bright, which is by
Tiger
Tennyson,
burning
maybe?
bright.
Hold on, it's going to bother me.
How many stars do I see tonight? Tiger, tiger.
That actually
Is
it's by
that
William
pretty
Blake.
much it?
It's from Songs of Innocence. Yeah, Tiger, tiger, and Bergen bright in the forest of the night. Mortal, mortal, hand for eye, or hand or eye could frame thy fearful symmetry. Songs of Innocence, Song of Experience. Anyway, William Blake. But I'm not going to read that one because I already did. So I'm going to read Candace Major by Robert Frost,
Okay.
which is a poem I really love. And I really love Robert Frost, as we have talked about before. So, this is from the perspective of Missouri, by the way.
Mhm.
The great overdog, the heavenly beast with a star in one eye, gives a leap in the east. He dances upright all the way to the west and never once drops on his 4 feet to rest. I'm a poor underdog, but tonight I will bark with the great overdog that romps through the dark. It's applicable.
It is applicable.
We are the overdog. Yeah.
No longer the underdog, only overdog. But which one is updog?
Shut up.
Equate each SEC team to a My Hero character / quirk. These, okay, that's the question. The rest is just I started reading into the next because it's just a jumble of things.
There's a lot here. Okay, so Alabama is All Might this year because they're super powerful, but they're secretly injured, and they have to really strain to keep their big sexy form. Although some people do really love Small Might. I would say just like because Will Muschamp is on the staff and because of the personality of this defense, I think that Georgia is definitely Bakugo. Just lots of explosions, not a lot of subtlety, right? I'm trying to think. Let's see.
Who's Gene's guy? Who's that Gene's guy?
Great Genist.
Yes.
Yeah, he's a professional hero. Who was Great Genist? Is that like Kentucky because they just wear kit? Now I was thinking Kentucky is like plucky, but they've had some bad moments. I think Kentucky is Kirishima because like super good boys. Maybe have some uneven moments, but just rock hard abs, right? You know. Let's see. Florida is Mineta because I hate them both. Let's see.
Find me someone who
Samantha,
likes
do you have
Mineta.
any input? Hold on one sec. Samantha, do you have any input on SEC teams as My Hero Academia characters? Someone asked this question. Hold on one second.
Ask her who Mr. Principal is.
Nezu, who's like good but seems evil.
Well, yeah,
like
that's
the bear cat dog. Yeah, Nezu. Yeah, I want to actually know. Text me, babe. Hold
This
on.
is important.
I have some typing symbols.
Late breaking
So we already
news.
have Alabama as All Might. Yeah, someone did legit ask this question.
It's funny there are a lot of cat teams, so let me just throw this out. They are the Wild Wild Pussycats with like the that group of 4. Like there's 3 of the plucky young women, and then there's the one big guy. You're waiting for Samantha still?
Yeah, no, we're talking. We're
Okay,
arguing.
good. You're arguing. Natural
Well,
state of
we're
mind.
having a conversation. I mean,
Yes.
I think Mississippi State is Hound Dog because obviously. Let's see. I'm gonna say that. Oh, okay. I have a good one. South Carolina is Kaminari because they're good for one really good moment and then they just turn into idiots the rest of the year because that's what Kaminari does. Let's see. Wow, we're spending way too much time on this like really niche joke about anime. Let's see. We're gonna come back to this. We're gonna take this to the lab. And I'm going to present a very earnest all 14 teams as My Hero Academia characters. And I need the question is: are we only doing students, or are we doing just the 1A, like the 20
It's
from
just
1A?
characters.
Or are we doing the whole cast?
Characters
Total. Any characters.
total.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're gonna take this back to the lab. We're gonna do some film study. I'm gonna bring you back a list of all 14 teams.
One of my ideas that I want to do for Books for Keeps fundraiser events is I want to collaborate with a brewery in town to do PowerPoint parties. And this is a brilliant PowerPoint party presentation. Like,
oh my God. I would kill the shit out of this as a PowerPoint party.
yeah, that's what we'll do. It's going to be great.
I think Alabama is All Might is the one I'm sticking with. I think that's the best one so far. And
that one makes a lot of sense.
Florida is Mineta because Mineta is creepy and I hate him, and so is Florida. All right.
And then there's These are not questions, just tips for Yara. 1, you do not need extra layers for cold games. Your hate for the other team will keep you warmer than any jacket. 2, Jordan Davis can sign your tuba. I watched an unnamed Sousa player rip their bell in half at the 2017 SEC Championship. You guys have bell covers now anyway. Was there somebody that really ripped their Sousa in half? Ripped their bell in half?
Yes.
How?
Yes. It fell off, and it went in half.
Okay. That is pretty incredible.
Sousaphone bells, they sit into the body of the sousaphone, and they're secured by like 3 retention screws.
Mm-hmm.
But if the bell goes out of round, or the like coupler where you put the bell in goes out of round, then they won't. It's kind of like, you know, those like glass globe floor or layup fixtures where you have to like unscrew the 3 screws to get it out, and like kind of doesn't fit sometimes. If the fit is wrong, that crap will just fall out. It already happened this year. We had one like fall out during the homecoming parade. And the kid marched with like no horn or no bell. He marched like a heliocorn, which is like a sousaphone with a straight up bell for a rain catcher for the whole parade. It was hilarious.
Final segment of the show is the Yara's Rage Against the Machine, and I'm just gonna put like Yara's made this into an art form, and so I'm gonna post this on one of us can post this on our Twitter later because it's beautiful and everybody should see it, as long as there's nothing in here that's like identifying it anyway. But number 1. Describe the game in 3 words. Go.
Well, you were there for this one. I think you should do it.
Cold, but Braves. Doesn't really,
But Braves.
It's more, but Braves.
Beautiful.
Cold, but Braves.
Evocative. Incredibly. You know what? Sometimes poetry is really about the words you don't say more than it is. It's like jazz, more than the words you do say.
And I decided to use "but" in my very limited art form there. Yeah.
Coordinating conjunction. It's important.
Number 2. Why does everybody think our Lord and Savior Jordan Davis is 26? Huh? This is a joke I've been seeing on Twitter a lot. What's up with that?
Well, because he looks like
he does look
full ass man.
He does. You know that I don't think Jordan Davis looks like a full ass man as much as any of the dudes that have just like thick ass mustaches and nothing else do. Those are the dudes that look like someone's Uncle Cop. You know, like someone's Uncle Cop from a '90s sitcom or '80s sitcom is what those dudes look like. So, Number 3. This morning, a customer said JT Daniels is announcing his transfer tomorrow. What? Sad face, sad face.
I don't think that that's true. I mean, maybe your customer's right, but I don't think the customer at your work, which I know where it is, but I'm not going to like dox you. I don't think your customer knows better than anybody else. All right.
See? It's important. Did you know that Nick Saban is 5'7"? This is further evidence that all 5'7" men are evil and bad. Examples. 1. Nick Saban, Mussolini, Mark Zuckerberg, Jeff Bezos, Joe Rogan, Tom Cruise, Ben Shapiro. See, this is just more tinder on the fire that is my my PowerPoint presentation one day, that Nick Saban might actually be the Judeo-Christian devil, because birthday's on Halloween. His favorite number is obviously 13, I guess, or whatever. And his middle name's Lou. He's 5'7". Look at all these other boys.
You want to know my like worst UGA opinion? My worst English major opinion is that I don't like T.S. Eliot. My worst UGA opinion is that I don't like super hate Nick Saban. Like, I think he's like a really good coach, and he seems like a pretty good human.
He does, actually. Yeah. It's
I'm
all
sorry.
kind of
I'm sorry, guys.
I don't mind him all that much.
Do I hate Alabama? Yes. That's not a question. Yeah, no. I mean, if you're asking, do I go into paroxysms of rage when I see that particularly ugly shade of just like, I would say like rotting pig's blood red? Yeah, absolutely. But I don't like particularly hate Nick Saban. He's just he's the deal with the devil that they made. They're the problem. Faust is the bad guy of Faust, not the devil.
What was your favorite part of the game? Mine was either blooper. What is this? Blooper
and the dog pick.
Blooper
I think that's an
okay, I see now. Blooper and the dog pick. Jumbotron, or Yara was on the Jumbotron. I remember seeing them in the Jumbotron. Or meeting Bestie Justin, smiley face. Mine was definitely meeting Yara. There it is. Ha!
Mine was seeing my 2 good friends meet each other. I love when friends meet that haven't met. That's like as like a sort of compulsory extrovert. My greatest dream is to have all the people that I like and know in the same place all at once. which
That's
is
how I
why
feel.
which is why when I throw parties, it's very, very chaotic because
It's
I
like
invite
just
people who maybe shouldn't be at the same party. Yes, I am constantly taking my Ken and Barbie doll friends and loving their like faces together. Yes, exactly like when Abby and Disney Dog met.
hmm 6. I hate Alabama. Is there any chance they are going to lose before bowl time? You know what?
I think. I mean, I think it's more likely than I thought it was at the beginning of the year. But I
Yes.
mean, anybody can lose to Auburn. Auburn with nothing to lose is like it's like a honey badger with its paw stuck in a bear trap. Like, yeah, it's gonna die at some point, but it might kill you too. And
hmm
Alabama's looked vulnerable in some ways. And I think Bo Nix has the Bo Nix game where he passes out and like weekend it Bernie's his way into like 400 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 touchdown running that they could totally win. Right? Like Bo Nix is good for one game a year where he like
Uh-huh.
wakes up on Sunday and he's like, "What happened? Where was I?" And they're like, "Bro, we have a sick story to tell you."
It's like,
He's just unconscious for the whole game, throwing like
uh,
50-yard dimes from like 3 guys draped over him.
Number 7. What does it mean to decline a penalty? I saw that during Bama game and was lost.
Well, yeah. So sometimes, if the result of the play is better for you, you can decline a penalty at any time as a football coach. Normally, they don't ask because almost every time it's better for you to take the penalty. So, like if there's a false start before the actual result of the play is dead, you take the penalty 100% of the time because the play was never run on a dead ball foul. But like for instance, if you are the offense on 1st and 10 and you throw a 20-yard bomb, well not a bomb, but you throw a 20-yard pass on 1st and 10, right? And the guy who catches the ball successfully is interfered with, like the defense gets a pass interference call that's only worth 15 yards, you would decline the penalty because you already got 20 yards, you don't need the 15, right? So situationally there are some times where it makes more sense because most of the time penalties don't come with a loss of down, so you replay the down, right? So for instance, like if you have a 3rd and 8, if you're a defensive team and you have a 3rd and 8 and the offensive team holds, you a lot of times decline that penalty because you'd rather have 4th and 8 than 3rd and 18, right? If
Strategy,
you
baby.
successfully defend the play. Yeah.
It's important. It's important to know. It's important to know how to football. Because
Yeah,
that's
well, I don't know how
when
to do that.
the winners are made and the losers are also made.
Oh my God, will you outro us out of this before like we lose our last remaining listener?
This has been Chapel Bell
This is
Curve.
it.
You can find us on iTunes, Google Play, and pretty much anywhere else you can subscribe to a podcast. If you want to get in touch with us, who knows why you would want to, but you can do so on Facebook by searching Chapel Bell Curve or email chapelbellcurve@gmail.com, or on Twitter, on Instagram. They're all Chapel Bell Curve. If you'd like to support this Chucklefuck podcast, give us $1 or $3 or $5 or $50 if you want us to read your ad. You could do so on our Patreon, patreon.com/Chapel Bell Curve. If you enjoyed today's episode, feel free to leave a rating and a review. 5 stars, because that's the only option. But, we'll catch you in the Classic City until next week when we go out to see our Neyland Stadium friends. Huge
Those
quotes.
water stealing
Huge
sons of
quotes.
bitches.
I'm going to come back with
Those-
their dog. I'm going to go up there. I'm going to take their dog and bring it back.
I love that. I want your dog. I want your dog. I hate your team and your state.
Smokey has entered
A
the
lot of
transfer
lovely
portal.
people up there.
Until then,
right.
go
Until then,
Dogs.